Utopia. Nope, not that one. Not that one either. What? Oh, we can't talk about that yet. Ah, that's the one. So this premiered on Amazon during the pandemic. And before the fanboys across the pond lose their minds in the comments, let me add this. That's better. And since you missed it, I'm going to recap episode 1 starting now. We open with this newlywed couple. Oh, how lovely they are. Wifey was left this house by her grandpapa after he died. While cleaning up, hubby comes across these weird illustrations. It looks like some sort of comic book about a little girl, and it is titled Utopia, the conclusion to dystopia. After Googling it, he finds out that dystopia is a very obscure comic, and he is holding the manuscript to the follow-up, and that it's worth a lot of money. So he hatches an idea. We transition to an unspecified time later, where in 2 different places, 2 people simultaneously find out that Utopia has been discovered and will be auctioned at the local Fringe Con. Sam sends a text to the group to meet at Fringe Con to bid on Utopia. She also tells Ian, a member, that he can finally meet Becky. Becky also receives the text and is very excited so they can finally put faces to names. How they all don't know what each other looks like is beyond me. So the backstory to Dystopia is about a white rabbit who runs a company called Harvest, who kidnapped a scientist and his daughter Jessica Hyde. They were saved by this woman named Artemis. Unfortunately, Harvest tracked them down, and inevitably the scientist was recaptured and forced to do heinous experiments, creating many deadly viruses the world has had to deal with. This narration came from Wilson, who was the other person who found out about Utopia's discovery, and he was telling that to his dad and his little sister. We cut to Becky's place, where while she was packing for her trip, she fumbled with some medication and ended up going into a seizure-like state. She strapped herself into her chair to stop herself from flailing, and then we see that she has a strange marking on her neck. Finally, we arrive at the day of Fringe Con. Sam arrives by Fringe bus and hurries her way inside. She sends a text to the group, letting them know they should all bid $500, and then at the last minute she'll swoop in, outbidding them all to deflate the market. The couple are with their friends setting up for the auction. Wilson is standing in line. He's the first to go in and see the Utopia manuscript. He asks where did they get it, and they said they got it from the illustrator, but they go into no other detail. He writes down his bid but does not give his contact information because he's very suspicious. Then we meet Alfie and Beardy, and they hop into this nice antique car with a big yellow bag on the back. Becky is up next to see Utopia manuscript, and she asks if it has anything in it that is dealing with a virus, but they don't tell her. Ian was able to take a picture of it while the couple was distracted. Then he heads down to the bar where he meets Becky in person for the first time. They hit it off. Meanwhile, Sam is in the hotel room looking at the one single panel that they're allowed to see, and she tells them that she will outbid the highest bidder which they say is at 5,000. So she says she can get them 6. So down at the bar, Ian and Becky are still meeting and greeting, and they finally hit it off. My man Ian gets a lucky schmackaroonie on the lips. Good for you, pal. Then this gentleman that looks like he could be the Ghost Rider reborn is looking at the manuscript, and he says he wants to preempt all bidding. They say they just need his room number, so he throws down his business card, which has a penthouse written on him. Then he throws down $20,000. Back down at the bar, the gang are talking about how the couple don't know what they have, and it's imperative for them to be able to purchase it. And based off of what they saw, it would seem that there is some very big things coming in the not too distant future. Last to show up is Grant, who his group thinks is a grown man who is a photographer to the stars. He says he came a long way by bus just to see it, but wifey tells him that she's already sold it and that if he wants to look at it, he can go up to the penthouse. So he has devised a plan and heads to the Umi booth. He goes back up to the front desk and talks to the concierge, saying that he lost his dad and his card key and that they're staying in the penthouse. She says they usually need some form of ID to hand out a new key card. So he produces a card from the Umi club table with the name Grant Carson, which Carson was the last name of the collector who actually bought the manifesto or the manuscript. So the Yellow Bag Boys arrive at the hotel. They make their way up to the couple, and they're flashing, doing live streams of the money they just made, having a great time and partying, when a knock comes at the door. So our more quiet member of the Yellow Bag Boys asks where the Utopia manuscript is. She said it's sold and tries to close the door in his face. He does not let that happen. They barge their way in and ask again where the Utopia manuscript is and who has seen it. They give the list of everyone who had seen it and bid on it. And then they pull out some syringes from the yellow bag, tell them that they're just going to knock them out real quick and take their money. Everyone's believing that it's just going to be a robbery, so they go along with it since the gentlemen were so sterile about it. The gentlemen were so sterile about it. They all start falling out one by one, and the wifey is last, and she slowly slides down the curtains. The quiet one says, "Let's set the scene." And then they start looking at the list of the people who saw Utopia. Grant shows up at the penthouse, and he is like a kid at Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. He starts slamming some champagne, turns on the music in the fire, starts dancing everywhere, just like he was Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone 2. He even starts dancing in the hot tub where he drops his Umi club card, but finally finds Utopia manuscript in the bedroom. When he does, there comes someone through the front door, and he hides behind the bed. Turns out it is the cosplayer from down at the bar with the collector. He starts noticing things are out of place, but before he can do anything about it, a knock is at the door. When he looks through the peephole, he sees the Yellow Bag Boys, which I wouldn't have answered the door for, because when he does, they point a gun in his face. The cosplayer says something funny to them, but they don't find it funny and knock her out. Then, as the collector tries to grab the phone to call for help, the quiet one stabs him with an ornament directly into the hand, sticking it to the table. And that's when Grant runs out of the hotel room and down the stairs. They follow him, but when they get to the stairway, they have definitely lost him. He escapes into the courtyard and over a fence right as the breaking of dawn. We cut back to the penthouse and they go back to finish the job. They also noticed the ornament that Grant touched and they're going to pull the prints. They take out the cosplayer and the bearded one calls into what they call home all the names of the people on the list that seen Utopia, while the collector waves to the quiet one. Then they go from room to room, executing everyone that had seen Utopia, just one after another. The last individual that they take out turns out to have mental health history until finally they convince him to look out the window and they shoot him in the side of the head, which allows them to go in and set it up to make it look like he killed himself. And the fact that he's wearing a dress of a little girl, I think everyone will believe it. So they checked off all the names except for everyone that was in the group who weren't staying at the hotel, and they circle Wilson. Down at the bar, they ask if they can go back to Wilson's house. He finally says yes, they can go drink there. Back at the couple's hotel room, this woman walks in and she just starts grabbing up stuff that she's seeing around the room. Everyone seems to be dead except for Wifey, who reaches out to this unnamed person. She says they were poisoned. She says that they're trying to kill them. And the whole time, Jessica is literally robbing her for her jewelry, her phone, that card of the collector. And then she's asking about where Utopia is or where the little boy is. The wifey asks her with her last breath why. And then this woman delivers a badass line.
Because I'm Jessica Hyde.
And that ends Utopia, Season 1, Episode 1. Subscribe and stay tuned for the rest of this first season of this crazy show.